What I have here is a 1934 Enfield No2 Mk1, and it's the usual caliber for the like is 32 Smith or 38 Smith and Wesson, and it's almost like areas of it are kind of delicate. I'll throw in some pictures I took when I was taking it apart. I've never done anything like this one before. She's different, but you can see by some of these stains she was a bit rusty. There's quite a bit of rust here. You can see the pitting. I mean, the gun is quite old. It's 34, say 2014. That's 70, 80, 81 years old because it's 2015. And anything from England, being such a humid country, I tend to take them all apart. But I've never seen one that was quite as bad as this one. I think it's been in storage for a long time. It's not to the point where it's not usable. I mean, it's just got some kind of nasty pitting on it. And I soaked the thing overnight in ballistol. I just did the cover. Get this stuff off my hands because I just cleaned that. This is the cover for the left side. After you put all the components back in, the internal parts, this cleaned up very well. So what I did was I sprayed it with ballistol, let her soak. Then I took a brass brass wire brush, and I scrubbed her out, and it came really good. I tried the plastic one. The plastic one wouldn't move it, so the ballistol soaked it up a lot. But I took it in the sink, don't tell my wife, and I ran it under hot water and scrubbed her out. And as you can see, she turned out pretty clean. Looks pretty good. The barrel, that's been an ongoing scrubbing project. The wooden grips were they're loose. It's almost like they're rocking, and it turns out it's because of the rust and that was starting to build up underneath it. So it's a really good idea if you get anything like this. Even if you can't strip it down, if you're not comfortable stripping it down like this, like I took pictures as I took it apart. Just at least you could still get at that. At least spray it with oil, like I like the ballistol, or as long as you get something in there, some kind of preservative. There's all kinds of gun oils that work, because it's better than just letting her rust. But I stripped the bugger down and giving her a good scrubbing. You see, she looks pretty grody there, but that's not as there we go. Get this funky light on this camera. It's not as it's not structurally harming anything. It'll be covered by the grips. The grips themselves, I gave them. They're pretty dirty actually, but it is a surplus revolver, and I've given it 2 coats of ballistol and cleaned up all that, and it sucked that stuff up. I mean, it sucked it up like crazy. So the last dose I gave it, not so much, but the wood was dry. So that's all taken care of. All this stuff's been sprayed in ballistol and it's been soaking in it. And now I'm just in the scrubbing stages so I can reassemble it. The barrel, I scrubbed that out with ballistol. I'm working on that. I had the cylinder all stripped down. Pretty easy. That's actually screwed on. So when you put the ejector star back in place there, you just stick a pin through that hole and it screws off and the whole assembly comes out. So I got in there and I cleaned that all out, lubed it up with ballistol, So that's ready to go back on. So I just got to get the frame cleaned up. Once that's cleaned up, then I'll individually clean these things up. I mean, there's a spring from the 1800s, really. It's quite interesting. I'll video putting this thing back together. It's kind of interesting, the design of this Enfield. But anyway, I'm going to get my brass wire brush, return to the sink, and give this a scrub. Get this scrubbed up. As you can see the pitting, but it's all cleaned out. All the rust is gone, all the old dried up cosaline is gone. And there's just a nice film of ballast all left. And she's got some hurting pits. Fortunately, it's all in places where you're not going to really see it. But this side here, she's seen a few battles. 1934, this thing just might have seen a few battles. So now I'm putting the, get the camera back where it needs to be. I'm putting the cylinder lock back in, and it's got this itty bitty little spring. There we go, get my groovy little light on here. So, there's a little tiny spring in there. And you got to compress that and get it on this pin, because this pin is part of the frame. And it shot off on me once. Fortunately, I found it reasonably fast. So you got to compress that little bugger, start sliding this over the pin. And what I'm doing now, you can see where the cylinder lock goes into the knots there, is walking this bugger on. So you just get a little push, and then you can see she's clicked in there, and very gently get her spring. So I got the trigger. The trigger's next to go back in. Now I gotta get this little fella, goes in here. Back on the subject there, buddy. There you go. Oop, get the light on. So I'm just doing it this way because I only got one hand. And that pin, actually I'll take this off. See if I can get him in the hole. There. And you can see how that works against the cylinder lock. It's a flat, like a plunger type deal. And as you work it. Okay, next piece that goes on is a hammer. Okay, what was holding it up was just catching on the little catch that's on the trigger there. So, slipped right in. It's best not to force. If you take a look, instead of forcing things, you will save yourself a lot of grief and broken parts. Now I can put the hand back in. There. And next, get this out of the way, will be the that lever that spring actuates your hammer there. So I'll stick that in. Not sure the name of all these parts, so I'll get that tapped in there. And when I tap it in, I get the pins just sitting there, just in the hole. Now, where to put that thing? There it is. This has got to go in here. And make sure you're south of this pin, for the pivot pin for the hammer. I'll just slide him in there like that. I'm going to go down and put this frame on the anvil of my vise, and I'm going to tap that pin through. I want all this brace because it's fairly thin. Okay, I got the pin back in, and this lever's back in place. We'll put the hand in. Stay on target here. There. You can see there'll be when I put the spring in, you'll see how all this works. It's pretty slick. It's a double action system on this. Pretty slick how that's set up. Okay, I guess the next thing is a spring. Alright, I'm going to try to do this at one hand. There's a spring. Squeeze that bugger in. Hey, look at that. Oh, I tried to come right out the other side, didn't I? Alright, spring's in place. So the only thing I left to do, you can see there's like a little cup in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. And it's got there's a pin machined into the end of this little arm on the end of the hammer. I've got to bring that down and hook that fella in there. That's how I get it apart. And hopefully I can do that. I should be able to. That's going to be a two-hand job, so I'll just probably a pair of pliers would be a little better. I'm going to try to do it by hand first, and I'll get back to you on how to make out with that. And as you can see, it did require a small pair of needle nose, so I just grabbed onto it here, pushing back, because that tends to want to run ahead when you put the pressure on it. So with the pliers, just pulled it down and just put that into the little fork that's on the end of that spring. So that's all back together. Yeah, quite the mechanism. Yep. Okay, so we got this all assembled. Get a bit of an idea how all that works. Good. Alright. Put the plate, cover back on. Plate, whatever you want to call it. Everything works. Double action works. Put the grips on next. Okay, grips are on. Next fun part will be putting the catch on here for the barrel. I cleaned up the spring. Some 50-year-old Cosmoline stuck in there, so get all that out. No rust, fortunately. The little pen just fits in that hole there. There you go. And just take this bad boy. Again, I'm trying to do this with one hand. Slide them in place. Now I'll just push against that spring a bit, and I got the pin here, right there, leaning against the cylinder. Slide them in, screw them in, and that'll be done. Next, I just put this catch back on. It just slides in place there. It's 2 screws, shouldered screws. Hold that in. So next, you get the little pawl. Slides in there, and that's what the hook goes up on the inside. And of course, when you slide that in, when you break open the barrel, it pushes on the extractor. So I'll slide that bad boy on there. Push that down, push that up, so it fits up inside just locks into the screw there. And of course that knocked the pawl out of place. Which is no big deal. I'll just pull them back down. There we go. And he's lined up. All I gotta do now is slip the frame back in here. Put the pin back in, in the screws, and that should be it. So we make out with that. Okay, got the pin in. It's machined on one side. Take that off for this little fella here to fit on, which helps activate the extractor. So we put that on. Of course, that everything's got to fit in that machine notch. So we'll put this on. There's a long screw here, goes right through, and it's got a machined end on it, which will fit in here to keep that sucker from rocking. And then there's these two little screws here. Of course, one goes in here, and the other one goes on the other side. So we'll put those on, and that should be it. Alright, so I got that screw in there, locks this little bugger in place, goes right through from the other side. So that's all back in. Got the screws on the end of the hinge pin there. Don't over tighten these because it'll jam up it'll tighten up too much and you won't be able to get her apart. So I must have done something right. As you can see, the extractor works. Everything is functioning as it should. Boy, they got some bits and springs in this thing. Double action works good. And this bad boy is finished, de-rusted, scrubbed, lubed, fixed. And even the grips are tight now. They're nice and tight. It's got a little bit of pitting in the barrel. And you have to, oh yeah, look at that. Get right in there at that light. I'll tell you, she's actually, some people say they're ugly. I kind of like it. The internal mechanisms that you just seen is quite fascinating, at least to me it is. It's different. It's like a kind of a mixture of the old and the new. That spring is something else. And buddy, that spring has got power. But anyway, it's back together. And then my next job's clean this mess up before the wife comes home. Of course, I have a couple of weeks left to do that.